SIG-23. It is 11 February 2021, and once again I've found missing Fort Observer reports in different files, so here we go, catching up. Political warning. Socialists to refocus on local grassroots politics. In response to the return of allegedly centrist politics under Biden, Democratic Socialists of America, or the DSA, called for the left to focus on building down ballot influence. Okay, they claimed that with no obvious successor to Bernie Sanders on the national stage, the lack of a uniting figure will inhibit their ability to gain significant power in future federal elections. Instead, they called on the left to focus on local and municipal elections to build a grassroots socialist movement to redefine the Democratic Party platform. In the long term, they envision these lower-level representatives to be the face of the left on the national scene. DSA activist David Duhale, D-U-H-A-L-E, writes, "We focus our energies there at the local level and build a bench of democratic socialists to eventually elect to higher offices such as the U.S. House, statewide offices, and eventually the presidency." Observers note, some DSA members have described this strategy as developing local versions of the squad who can build movements, eventually propelling them into higher office. The strategy is a continuation of electoral successes in 2018, where a substantial number of socialists were elected to city councils and other local and state positions. Low intensity conflict in some. This is going to be a combination of two different dates. The 3rd, I believe, and the 9th, because they weren't in my regular inbox, so whatever. After a successful campaign to have Georgia's 3% security force removed from Cash App, Atlanta area anti-fascists are lobbying a forum hosting website to remove the 3% security force forum. Observers note, anti-fascists have a history of successful campaigns to have far-right groups and patriot militias removed from social media platforms and commercial websites. The 3% security forces removal from Cash App is an example of economic warfare, whereby right-wing groups are dislocated from funding sources, including commercial efforts. The potential removal from the forum website will impair the group's online communication and coordination, after also being removed from Facebook. Anti-fascist groups likely hope that the group will disband out of frustration and/or the ability to communicate. Portland fascists conduct community outreach and propaganda campaign. Logistics Bloc, an anti-fascist logistics support group in Portland, Oregon, is assembling gift bags for police abolishment to hand out to the local community. The bags will include food, various far-left propaganda flyers, contact information or alternative numbers to call in lieu of local law enforcement, as well as introductory bios of local anti-fascists. Observers note, this is a traditional Hearts and Minds campaign to win over the local populace and build support for community policing and diminish support for police. By offering alternative resources, anti-fascists seek to supplant the need or desire for government services such as law enforcement. In addition, providing bios is an attempt to introduce local anti-fascists as representatives or defenders of the community. Leftists memorialize anti-police violence for Black History Month. In Chicago, the Chicago, Illinois chapter of the far-left revolutionary group For the People reminded online followers of the cleansing power of fire for Black History Month, posting pictures of burning police buildings and vehicles from 2020. Observers note, many far-left groups have been attempting to stoke up 2020 levels of unrest and rioting moving into this year. Leftists will continue to engage in organizing and disruption efforts, however, until a flashpoint such as a government overstep or a high-profile George Floyd-type incident, they will likely not experience the same level of popular support. Leftists call for recurring weekend demonstrations in D.C. The anti-fascist group They Them Collective is organizing a mutual aid event and a follow-on public disruption this weekend in Washington, D.C. That would have been for this weekend previously passed, I believe. Activists are planning to hold similar events every weekend at the Capitol, calling for the total abolition of all American law enforcement. Observers note, the They Them Collective was one of the primary far-left groups that organized disruptions in D.C. surrounding the 2020 election. Their general opposition to the existence of law enforcement ensures continued activity under the current Democrat administration. Continued violent clashes with police are likely. A notable National Guard presence, however, has been maintained in D.C. and is likely to stifle turnout as far-left groups seek to avoid mass arrests and surveillance by police. Hackers seize control of Florida water treatment plant. Internet hackers recently breached the industrial control system of a water treatment facility that supplies approximately 15,000 residents of Oldsmar, Florida, north of Tampa. After gaining access to software known as TeamViewer, hackers attempted to increase the amount of sodium hydroxide, commonly known as lye, to dangerously high levels. Plant employees monitoring the systems reported unauthorized access and activity on controller screens, clicking around and opening programs and manipulating the system. No suspects have been identified, but the Federal Bureau of Investigation and Secret Service are assisting the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department's investigation into the breach. Observers note, the motive for this attack is unclear, however. The motive for this attack is unclear. However, terrorist groups and nation states have targeted U.S. critical infrastructure since at least 2013, when Iranian-backed hackers targeted a small dam in upstate New York. TeamViewer, or rather TeamViewer, reports that its software, which enables remote tech support, is currently installed on approximately 2.5 billion devices worldwide. Given the proliferation of this type of software, industrial control systems in America are likely to remain vulnerable to external manipulation. Leftist revolutionary groups renew calls for movement into the suburbs. The Southern California chapter of the Revolutionary Abolitionist Movement collaborated with other leftists to publish a new propaganda piece entitled Anarchy in the Burbs. In the document, authors identify suburbs and smaller cities as the new frontier for, quote, looting, for attacking the police, and for spreading the geography of the uprising. They specifically identify the Inland Empire, San Bernardino, Riverside, Victorville, for example, as the new sites of struggle. They provided specific intelligence highlights from 2020 for different cities in the area, including the presence of white supremacists, Trump supporters, armed citizens, and lackluster law enforcement responses. Observers note, they're observing multiple groups proposing the establishment of anarchist hubs in suburban areas and smaller cities. This movement is largely inspired by the success of far-left riots in cities such as Kenosha, Washington, and Ferguson, Missouri. Moving out of dense metropolitan areas into smaller cities is based on tactical considerations as well as a likely attempt to avoid isolation. Portland anti-fascists tracking police union employees, lawyers, and the mayor. Rose City Counter Info, a group providing intelligence support and propaganda for Rose City Antifa, provided a recent update that the Portland Police Association has not relocated its headquarters despite the rumors. They supported this conclusion by tracking the movement of PPA attorneys and members within the city, spotting their privately owned vehicles, observing the installation of security systems, and noting the level of foot traffic at the PPA building. In addition, other Portland area anti-fascists are posting updated locations and activity of Mayor Ted Wheeler, including who he is dating, as well as meeting times and locations, observers note. In late 2020, they reported that Portland anti-fascists were discussing tracking and reporting on the movement of police officers while off duty. This would be a considerable undertaking requiring a significant amount of manpower and resources. They have chosen to begin with the surveillance of PPA workers and facilities, a notably smaller target. These updates frequently reference a network of scouts or crows that are monitoring police facilities, following PPA workers, and conducting digital surveillance of relevant online records databases. This indicates that in Portland, the far left's intelligence gathering network is becoming increasingly capable and experienced, which could support more labor-intensive operations in the future. FBI arrests neo-Nazi intent on killing, in quotations. FBI agents arrested Christian Mackey in Grand Prairie, Texas on Monday for unlawfully selling a firearm to a known felon. According to court documents, Mackey is a member of the neo-Nazi group Iron Front that espouses siege ideology, which includes launching accelerationist attacks to bring about a societal collapse and subsequent race war. Online, Mackey allegedly called for Iron Front members to kill Jewish and Black Americans, conduct off-the-grid activities against the government, and die attacking the system, observers note. Neo-Nazi accelerationism is geared towards sowing violence and chaos to bring about a societal or governmental collapse, conditions which they claim would allow for the establishment of an ethno-state. Online conversations like Mackey's, which are almost certainly monitored by law enforcement, will continue to drive attention, fear, and ultimately legislation specifically targeting the far right. Of note, the felon Mackey sold the firearm to was a paid informant that undercover FBI agents connected with Mackey specifically for the sale. This last one was from February 9th, so that's only 2 days ago. Actually, these last 2 or 3. That one, yeah, so there you go. And I'm caught up once again. All right, 623 out.